Good evening, everybody. I want to make sure we want to test, make sure you can hear us. Good morning. Good evening, everybody. We want to make sure you can hear us first because we're broadcasting on a couple of new pages tonight. If you could go in the comments and let me know if you can hear me. Good evening, everybody. I want to make sure we want to test, make sure you can hear us. Yes. Okay. Great. 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 All right. Welcome, everybody. Good evening. Great. All right. Thank you, everybody. Great. Good evening. Welcome to Expanded Consciousness Beyond Belief. I am Deidre Smith. I am filling in for Life Coach Malachi tonight. And I just want to give him some appreciation for allowing me to host on his platform tonight while he takes a great, well earned day off since he relaunched the broadcast after CDP's transition. Coach has probably only physically missed one Thursday. So I think it's time for him to get some rest and enjoy himself. So thank you again, brother, for entrusting me with the platform. Tonight, we're going to dig into some content that may be a little difficult for some of you to hear. So I want to give some preppers. One, we are going to talk about trauma, different forms of trauma, and how they can cause us to be disconnected from ourselves. And when that happens, how we forget to trust our own intuition or have to learn all over again how to retrust ourselves. So I just want to put that out there. And let's say some greetings before we get started. Let's say good evening to Miss Gwen. Hi, Miss Gwen. It's good to see you. Hi, Dr. Dorothy. And thank you. The other Malachi, how are you? Good evening. Miss Teresa, good to see you. Holly, it's great to see you too. April, good to see you. And hi, Mother White, it's great to see you too. All right. So let's get into it. So tonight's session, we're gonna keep you to an hour. We're gonna talk. I'm gonna let you ask questions. But we're gonna keep it to an hour. But we're gonna talk about getting back to you and how different traumas or different experiences in life, whether it be religious trauma or deconstruction or decolonization that comes with deconstruction, how you have to relearn to trust yourself. So let's talk about some foundational terms. Hi, Pastor LaDonna. I want to give you a shout out too. Thank you, Pastor LaDonna. So let's go ahead and let's talk about some really common sense terms that will help you understand it. And I'm going to try to make it very practical for you. So feel free to chime away in the comments. But let's go. Let's talk about what being yourself means or what being you means. Being your most authentic self, and you'll hear Coach refer to this a lot, but you'll hear other people talk about it too. Being authentically you means embracing not only the core of who you are, but all of those things that make you who you are, the good, the bad, and you embrace those things to be your highest self. When we are born into this world, we may experience things like life trauma. We may experience whether any kind of trauma, whether it be illness as a child, there could be abuse of any kind as a child. And then if you couple that with growing up here in America, and most of us, not all, some on here may not have attended Christian churches, but at least in Westernized Christianity, growing up here in America, you have been told things, you've been given scriptures like, lean not to your own understanding, in all your ways, acknowledge him and he'll direct your path, right? Or if you grew up in fundamentalist backgrounds, then you grew up with pastors and bishops that control like literally everything you do. So you have to ask for permission to do even simple things or make life decisions. And so when that happens, you slowly grow up in a society where you are taught to not trust yourself. So when you go through traumas, if you go through abuse, if you grew up with a narcissist abuser, whether it's a partner, a parent, whatever, narcissists are a good example of trying to make you think that what you know happened didn't happen. We call it gaslighting, but they're really good at painting pictures to make you feel like you can't trust your own feelings of when you are safe, when you are not. And so when you have been raised, especially here in America, if you dealt with trauma, any kind of trauma, and then you layer that with westernized Christian thinking, which has you constantly looking towards the outward God, we call Sky Daddy sometimes, what we call Jesus external, but forgetting the scripture, if you were in Christian church, the scripture that says is Christ in us, the hope of glory. If you keep looking for a rapture to come, that's going to save us from ourselves, save us from all this around us, rather than taking control of our own lives and carving out a path for our own selves and trusting ourselves, then we're stuck in this dilemma where we really are not trusting our full intuition. And what we understand as intuition, a lot of times people think the intuition is just what you might hear, that little voice in your ear, right? How many of you think, for the most part, your intuition is that little small voice you might hear with something kind of giving you a warning or kind of giving you a little nudge? Well, I'm here tonight to tell you that intuition, there's actually two additional centers of intuition that when you reconnect yourself after those traumas, that when you link those in, you really are now whole, or what we would call fully embodied again. So I'm gonna get into some terms. I'm not gonna make it technical because I want this to be um, relatable, understandable, and something that you can literally take home today and start implementing in your life. Thank you, Teresa. Yes, religious trauma syndrome. There are so many. There is a whole now science, a whole social science side of psychology that is literally dealing with religious trauma and even the neuroscience behind the traumas that that people have experienced because of bad church. Okay, bad church, and bad church can be worse than no church. And what we see, especially with this Christian nationalist movement, and I'm not going to go too political, but what I will say about this Christian nationalist movement it is deeply rooted in fundamentalist Christian thinking, and that in and of itself precludes you from having a say so over your own life. If you grew up in a fundamentalist Christian household or in a community, then you didn't have autonomy over your own decisions, your own physical body. You may have even been forced into marriages, thinking that was the right thing for you to do, but you never really wanted to be married. Things like that. So let's talk about how trauma and colonization interferes with our intuition centers. So, our intuition centers are our gut, our stomach, our heart, and our head. Most people are used to dealing with their head. Okay. Most people are used to dealing with their head. And so I'm gonna show you how it works, where you recognize your heart and your stomach and how they are all a part of one system to help your intuition be its strongest. Okay, we're going to talk about how you get pulled away from those things, and then before the night is over, we are going to learn how to get back to those things and what you can do to embrace that journey. Okay, so the three centers again: the gut. I'm going to type this in here so you guys can have it in front of you while I go through the descriptions. And your intuition centers. Let's go. Let's put this up. I'm going to add it. I'm going to show it so you guys can see. Your gut, your heart, and your head. Those are your intuition centers. And when we have those intuition centers fully in alignment, you'll hear in consciousness talk and spirituality people talking about alignment. In African spirituality, you'll hear about Ori, the higher self, and it's all about getting back to that most authentic place of who you are. Okay, so let's talk about this. Um, let's talk about it. All right, now with our gut. Our gut is our stomach. How many of you have ever been in a situation when you walk in a room, you could be out shopping, you could just be out somewhere and you get a really like weird feeling in your stomach. And you're like, oh, almost feel like when you're on a roller coaster and you hit that hill, you go all the way down and you get that sinking feeling in your stomach, but you're in an area where you're not on a roller coaster and you're like, why am I feeling that feeling? That is your intuition. Now, most people might dismiss it. Most people might think if they're not in a situation where they think that feeling logically lines up, they'll try to explain it away because a lot of times in westernized thinking, we think a lot with our head and we try to rationalize away things to kind of downplay stuff. So, that sinking feeling or that jumpy feeling, it's your intuition, especially when it's registering in a situation where you all of a sudden may not feel safe, all of a sudden where you may not feel like something's wrong, you need to be on alert. Um, that's what gut intuition can feel like. Um, so that's one thing. So for the gut intuition, how does trauma and the colonization that Americans have gone through, how does that factor in and how does that impact us to not trust our gut? The first thing I want you all to understand is that colonizers criminalized and demonized indigenous practices that were rooted in the body, like the physical body. So, dancing, drumming, ritual movements, sex positivity, like having a positive sex body image, um, and how we embodied ourselves in worship. Those were labeled as pagan, demonic, and savage, and they were literally criminalized during chattel slavery, right? And so that shows you, yes, Dr. Dorothy, people will hear the term disembodied, or you'll hear the term, and you've heard me say it even sometimes on the platform, re-embodied. So this is how they chose to disembody. If you watch the movie Roots, or you just know anything about the journey, once our my ancestors got over here from the ships, the cycle of abuse to detach them from their name, detach them from their worship style, detach them from their remembrance of the land, scrambling everybody up so they were no longer in tribes they were familiar with, all was a way to confuse and disrupt and upset the biological systems in our body so that we don't trust ourselves. So we don't trust our gut. And when you literally criminalize and demonize the very things that are rooted in our bodies being connected to God, we learned our ancestors started to learn not to trust. Not all, of course, some rebelled, but in the DNA, in the inter generational DNA transfer. It's been encoded in us to not trust unless your family has been working on decolonizing those thoughts. The impact, the impact of that type of trauma on the gut center, the body became something to fear or control, not trust. Over time, gut instincts, we use the term gut instincts quite often, we're learned that that's not really relevant. You don't need to trust your gut instincts. In corporate America, they don't want you to trust your gut instinct. They want to see some data on something to prove a point. They don't want you to trust your gut. They want you to say, no, 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 I don't need the emotion. I don't need the feeling. I need data to prove so I can make a decision. Um, and so that's been pathologized. If you acted with your gut in defiance of something, then you were often stigmatized. And definitely during chattel slavery, during Jim Crow, people were literally punished, imprisoned, and killed for protesting, which is it's a gut thing. It's a heart and head thing, but it's really a gut thing because something compels you. That gut instinct compels you, and so the effect on us today is many of us were taught to ignore our bodies, especially when anger, fear, and boundaries. We lack boundaries because we don't learn to trust our gut, and because that um, we're seen like as being irrational if we rely on it. And so we want to demystify those and throw out those myths tonight. So that's what the gut instinct is about. The next instinct I want to talk about is our heart instinct. Our heart, is the center of life. We all know that. We all know that between the breath and the heart and the blood that flows through us, it is what makes us, a living being outside of our soul. And so during colonization and even during any kind of abuse, colonizing, and even westernized Christianity, and if you've been in an abusive situation, people use guilt, shame, and conditional or hierarchical love to manipulate emotional expression. Love has conditions. Even though they may preach that love is blind, love has no conditions, in abusive, toxic relationships, dynamics, even in churches or places of authority, love was conditional. And so in fundamentalist spaces is that they'll say God is love, but they really mean God loves you only if you obey the rules that we say that you have to obey. And then empathy for oppressors is often encouraged over the solidarity with your own people. So we know that in chattel slavery, the Bible was misused to justify the uh, disaster, the tragedy of slavery, the of chattel slavery, to even justify women being silent in church, to justify abortion laws and things like that. The Bible has been manipulated to control any kind um, of you having any kind of disdain or having adverse feelings towards things that harm you. Like if somebody harmed you, if you grew up in an abusive household and your parents or your guardians are the persons who harmed you were supposed to forgive them because that's what the Bible says. And so you could not deal with, you couldn't even understand what authentic love is because as children, especially as children, our map of what love is starts first at home. So whoever our caretakers were, biological or legal guardians or whatever the case is, if you grew up in an unhealthy environment as a child, you don't even have a really clear aspect of what love is. And so it teaches you not to know what love is and not to trust your heart. Yep, yep. So the impact that we have felt over the years because of the traumas and colonization, the impacts have been feeling grief. There's righteous rage, and that we saw happen in 2020 with the reckoning with George Floyd. I think what happened collectively around the world was a righteous rage, and people's hearts ran out, like it just screamed out, like your gut screamed out, your everything in you, you felt compelled, and those that had never hit feet to pavement got out. And it was because they recognized that there had been a massive harm and the call for love for humanity overrode. We now see the backlash on that, but we remember how the 2020 movement was and how organic it felt across the nation. And that is because humanity's love center and gut center started aligning. And so today, especially in if you've gone through trauma and abuse, you've often learned to hide your emotions, hide how you feel, not really express things. So we have learned to repress things so that we can survive. We have learned to just keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, and not really touch or feel um, what we went through so that we can heal it and move forward. We just keep putting it back, keep putting it back, keep putting it back. Many people who were taught to show deeper emotion or sensitivity, it was seen as a weakness, not as a sacred truth. And so that's why now we have a society that think that emotions have something to do with your gender role, right? People think that, men aren't supposed to have emotions. And so people teach their family members, boys don't cry, right? You got to suck it up. Um, Having teaching those type of things and teaching children to be detached from emotions that are valid in how they feel is how they remain disembodied. Is how they remain disconnected from themselves. And so that is why they will look for external validation. That is why when the feelings become overwhelming, people don't know how to express themselves. They don't know how to, they can't show the emotion because they've been told don't ever show the emotion, but then they don't even know how to articulate the emotion. And so there's this inner conflict and it can come out sideways. It can come out in harm of self, harm of others. It can come out in psychological conditions and disorders because they don't know how to healthily express emotions. So I want us to encourage, even if that is how we were taught, or even if that's how we taught our loved ones, because when you know better, you do better. Um, dig through that. Dig through that. If you are still one of those people, they be like, I can't cry. I can't do this. I can't show my emotion. One of the most powerful things that we can do is to learn how to sit in uncomfortability. And sitting in uncomfortability is a very difficult thing. I won't say that it's easy to do, but it is essential for healing. When I talk about the type of trauma that I have gone through in life, I have gone through immense trauma. And in that journey, my survival instinct was escape. And so I was an overachiever so that I could make something happen for me so that I could escape the situation I was in. But then once I got out of the situation that I was in, I didn't know how to not achieve unless I was angry. I didn't know how to sit in safety, and I didn't know how to sit in safety and still be a superstar. I did alchemize the anger and became an overachiever, but then when I got out of harm's way, I didn't know how to reproduce the magic of me. And so that is when I realized that had a disconnect. And this was in my early to mid 20s. This was when I realized I had a disconnect, that something was still wrong. Like, wasn't the whole goal of escaping the trauma? As long as I got free, ain't that all I got to do? That's what I thought I had to do, right? Okay, I got out of the trauma situation. I'm living in a whole nother state. I'm building my whole new life. Now, why is my life still not why am I still feeling hollow? Why am I still feeling empty? And that was when I started this deep journey in my 20s of introspection, decolonization, deconstruction, therapy, like everything I needed to be able to get in touch to what the hell was going on and why is it that I can only perform and be an overachiever when I'm angry. I don't want to be angry every day in order to get straight A's, to be the best at everything I do. I want to just be myself and still be amazing and still be a top achiever, still be the top whatever. Okay? So that's kind of how I recognize the disembodiment. I recognized that I was disembodied, that I wasn't fully connected to myself because once I got out of harm's way, in harm's way, I was very clear and I came up with a whole plan to make sure that I could be in safety and thrive despite. And then when I got to where I thought would be like my safe place, then I didn't know how to function because I had functioned my entire life in trauma. And so when there was no trauma around me, I did not know how to function. And with that journey, like I said, I went through a ton of things. My head was always working during that time. We see this overthinking. We see this in anxiety disorders where the thoughts are constantly racing. Like my head was in overdrive, trying to rewire, trying to figure out what do we do now? We got out now. What do we do now? Because it's not syncing up. What do we do now? And what I had to realize what I had to realize was that this was going to be a much deeper journey, and this was going to take a lot longer, and it wasn't going to be a quick fix. It was not going to be a quick fix. That the trauma that I went through for 18 years was not going to get fixed because I'm now in college and away from harm. It wasn't going to get fixed in a semester. Wasn't going to get fixed in two. Won't get fixed in a decade. It's going to take time because of the layers upon layers upon layers of things that worked to cause this situation to be. The traumas that my abuser went through that made them who they were. The trauma, the me wanting the my abuser to still love me, right? So I'll be a perfect child, whatever that is, yet still being abused. Like the going back and forth, the not understanding my self worth, the not understanding that these trauma and the abuse and coming on the other side of it, it does not get fixed instantaneously. That the healing is layered, the healing is deep, and sometimes the healing almost takes as long as the abuse, sometimes, if not longer, depending on the reasons. It's not easy. And this is why it's easier to exist in westernized Christianity and blame problems on the devil, because that way you can always do a scapegoat. It's easy to be in westernized Christianity. When things are going wrong, you can just blame the devil, and then you don't have to do self accountability. And you don't have to do the shadow work to heal your own self. If the person that harms you never changes, never gives you an apology, I still owed it to myself to heal so that I could be my best person and be my best self, right? At least that's what I wanted. I was like, I want to be my best me, and I don't want to be hindered by things that weren't even my fault anymore. And like end scene, I don't want it. What do I have to do? And it took a lot of work, and it started with therapy for me to just deal and acknowledge and be able to safely discuss what I went through, to be able to have someone that was a practicing clinical professional validate the experience and help me undo harmful trauma narratives, the inner critic in myself, things like that, harmful narratives. I had to work through that through clinical therapy, not through Christian therapy. And I'm going to say that, not through religious therapy, through clinical therapy. Because when I had gone to Christian counseling prior, people were still trying to keep me tied to the faith. And the faith itself that the person who harmed me believed in, she would use the Bible to subjugate me as a child. That's unacceptable. That's unacceptable. So I'm not going back to the source to get the answer. Not going back to the source of the harm to get the answer. Do not go back to the source of the harm thinking you're going to get the answer to your healing. Don't do that, because there's always an agenda to keep you tethered to something harmful. Okay? Take that one for free. And yes, Dr. Dorothy, you're right. Dr. Dorothy, in Woman of Worthy, trauma, adversity to resilience to transformation. Yes, that is exactly what the journey is to re-embodiment, what you would call re-embodiment. It's recognizing the trauma, the adversity, the resilience to heal, to dig, to excavate, to kind of deal with that work, and then transform into this new whole human being that is in full connection with their heart, their head, their gut, their full self. And then they come out looking like, wow, what happened to you? They'll be like, wow, what happened? And it's simply that you are fully there, and you didn't have to flee, escape mentally, spiritually, to protect yourself anymore. And spiritual bypass avoids the deep work, and they want to just pray. Exactly. It's pray about everything prayer, Jesus will fix it, and all those things. And while those have their place, if people are still in those faith systems, they do have their place as far as praying for situations. That's it. But it does not deal with the accountability side of the harm. And that's why most people don't dig into spirituality, individual spirituality, or systems of spirituality, because it requires you to dig into deep work. It requires it. It's not an option. You're gonna have to work on yourself. Even if you've been harmed. There's still work. Even though I was harmed, even though I was abused, even though I had things that were horrible and I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. There's still things that Deidre has to work on because of those harms to be her best self. Like that's what it's about. And that's why spirituality resonates with me because it gives me the ability to take control of my life. And that is the most important thing that I want you to walk away is that you have to have control over your own life. Why would God create you for you to just be a robot and just operate on commands and prompts like the fundamentalists think you're supposed to do? You're just supposed to operate on commands and prompts and not think, not question, not debate, not wrestle with God, not meaning not really seeking and digging deep to get to the answers. The reason why fundamentalists don't want that is because they don't want you to realize that God is in you and that the wrestling that you're doing is really to get back to you. You're trying to block out all the noise of all the, what you can't do and what you shouldn't do and all this. And you are really trying to get back to source, the creator that created me and left something in me that ties each one of us as humans and humanity together. You want to get back to that place so that you can be extremely still in the midst of the chaos that we are dealing with, even in this world right now. But you can't do that when you are looking to the pastor to give you an answer, looking to the prayer line to give you the answer, looking to the prophet that you give it the $1,000 to give you a word. It's going to fix your situation. It's it's not going to work because you are not connected to the one that created you first. And when I understood in my Christian walk that Christ said that in Galatians it talked about Christ was in us, the hope of glory, and that the Holy Spirit that we were left was left to comfort us. It's not for us to be left waiting for something to fall down and take over us. It's for us to connect spirit to spirit because we are made in God's image. Yet they then in Psalms they don't want you to lean to your own understanding. But okay, we're made in His image. Christ is in us, the hope of glory. Then you do all this and you try to get back, but then they don't want you to trust yourselves. It's a little schizophrenic. It's a little, it's a little mixed up, and this is why you can read the Bible, but if you read the Bible for literacy, like to be literal, you will be consistently contradicted. And then you get whole different denominations that come up with their platforms based on how to rationalize the contradictions to prove that they are the best denomination. I had to do a timeout on all of that. I just want to get back to Deidre. Just get back to Deidre. Just want to get back to Deidre Smith. Okay, just want to get back to Deidre. Y'all can fight out in the denominations. Y'all can get messy and do whatever y'all want to do. Deidre just want to get back to who she is. Thank you. Okay. Deidre just wants to get back to who she is. Okay. And so, like Teresa says, this is about knowing yourself. And because of the traumas and because of the harms and because of the hurts that we've been through, there are some of us that really are struggling right now because we know there's more. We want to get healed. We don't want to get caught in the same trauma loops in relationships. Like we get out of one situation and then we befriend somebody and then we realize shortly down the road, damn, it's the same situation all over again. Now, how did I miss that? And then we're going through like loops of trauma, right? And there are ways that we can do this. And yes, we owe it to ourselves to heal. We owe it to ourselves to heal, and we owe it to ourselves to be our most authentic self and have our heart, our head, and our stomach be in full alignment. Be in full alignment. So, disembodiment, when your gut isn't in alignment, or when, okay, I'll say it this way because this is probably the best way for me to explain it. When your gut is trying to tell you something and you ignore it, and you do keep dealing with the stressors of life, things start to manifest in your gut. Things start to manifest. You may end up having some kind of digestive issue. It's because your gut's trying to tell you something. These stressors are coming at you and you're not listening, and your gut's trying to get your attention. You got to pay attention to your gut. Heart situations, when your heart, when you're all here in your head and you're not thinking with your heart, and then you're in situations that are unsafe, you get heart palpitations and you think you're having a heart attack, and they're like, you're having a panic attack. Why did your heart flutter? Your heart's trying to tell you something. Our body is meant to give us clues, not just in our five senses. We are meant to feel other centers in our body that can give us a clue on how to govern ourselves and govern our lives, right? So, in our head, because most of us stay in our head, one of a lot of us stay in our head, then we're overthinking, we're overcritical, we have an inner critic. We may be even dealing with mood disorders, not personality disorders. That's a different session for a different day. But mood disorders often come about as a result of traumas. It could be religious trauma, any kind of abuse that you've gone through in your childhood or adulthood. And you may be dealing with depression. You may be dealing with anxiety, which are mood disorders, and they affect how your brain perceives and is wired and how it processes things. So you can't rely solely on your brain when you're in the healing journey. You've got to rely on your gut. Yes, the second word is your gut. And then you've got to pay attention to your heart. My weakest area, like Dr. Dorothy, my weakest area, the one I'm concentrating on the most right now, is my gut. Trusting my gut. Because I've always had a knowing, and I always pay attention to the heart, right? But my gut, I am an empath. And so as an empath, I absorb things around me. So I have to establish what? Clean boundaries, clear, firm boundaries. And I have to do things to protect myself, even when I'm not engaging with a lot of people, to still protect my energy, because I can internalize things. And you will find that this happens a lot, where people internalize and then it comes out in a different way in their body when you weren't allowed to have full autonomy of your voice, full autonomy of speaking. If you were a Gen Xer like me, you were usually supposed to be seen and not heard and shut up. So if you're going through a trauma, you certainly couldn't be heard. So you just had to eat up all the feelings, eat up all the sadness, eat up all the hurt, eat up all the rage. Like, you just don't want to go through that. So now, in this season of my journey, dealt with the head, had been dealt with for like 13 years. We clear here. Heart, good. Been good for 20, like, good. This gut, every day, I'm so intentional. I'm so intentional. I don't take on things that are not my burden. I don't take on things that are not my burden. Don't take on things that are not my burden. I don't internalize people when they project their issues on me anymore, because I used to. When people got issues and they project their issues on you, I send it right back to them, because that's their chaos, not mine. because you're not gonna have me hemmed up all day, sick all day, not digesting my food well, so that I can't get nourishment for my body to be my best self. You're not going to do that. I hydrate. I take, supplements. I literally do things to protect my gut physically and spiritually. I take things to help my gut perform at its best self, probiotics, like practical stuff like probiotics, prebiotics. None of it should be taken for granted because it's all about nurturing yourself and taking good care of yourself, which most of us, if going through this journey, we had lost a point where we were not taking the best care of ourselves. And we didn't even know these centers in our body exist, other resonating centers in our body existed that we needed to pay attention to because we were either stuffing our feelings with alcohol, food, or repressing our thoughts. And so we were never in touch with our full body. So I hope that you can see how this thing is a very deep thing, and that it can affect you in many ways. And hopefully something I've shared so far has helped you to see, oh man, I didn't even realize I wasn't even paying attention to myself. Like we go on autopilot mode. I know when I get busy, you know, I tend to go on an autopilot. And it's like I'm just doing, and I'm really not paying attention to what's around me. And then once I get out of my autopilot mode, I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? Because I haven't paid attention to what's going around me because I had like tunnel vision because I'm just trying to like focus on what I can in survival mode. And that's where it gets dangerous because you're not in full connection and full alignment with yourself. And someone had mentioned earlier chakras. These same centers, like I said, this can be applied to any type of practice that you may already be involved in. If you practice anything in Hinduism and deal with chakras, you know that these points, your head, your heart, your stomach, you know these are points in chakra. If you deal with African spirituality, you know that these things tie into your ori. They also tie into the orishas, and that these very same chakra points tie into the seven major orishas. So whatever practice you are, you will find that these things, your heart, your head, and your gut, they matter. I can't stress that enough. And in our country, some of the highest cases of heart disease, of colon cancer, of like the industry for mental health medication is through the roof here in America. And why is that? Because if by design this country was meant to help you, make you disembodied. This country, you were brought here and you were disembodied. You were born into a system of being disembodied. And so sorry, you guys might have just seen Sasha. My cat Sasha. So um with that being said, you're gonna see Sasha. She's gonna come on the screen because she wants to play. Say hi, Sasha, since you want to come and say hi to everybody. You want to tell everybody how you keep your heart, your head, and your gut in alignment? No? No? Okay. So so our country, if you look at the top illnesses in our country, they're often tied to these very centers of intuition. Young people getting colon cancer, heart disease, mood disorders. And I qualify mood disorders specifically because personality disorders are a different topic. Um, because it mood they're different topics. I'll just say that mood disorders are stigmatized. When mood disorders really are your brain just tried to find a way for you to cope and survive in the middle of trauma. You know, depression, different types of depression. Your body, your mind rewired itself so that you could focus, so that you could survive. So yeah, my little Sasha, I'm gonna let her be Sasha for a minute so you guys can enjoy the cat moment, the cute cat moment. because she's like, "What are you doing, mommy?" Normally, you're in the comment section. So, so when we look at that in America, and then you look at in other countries, and then you say, "Dang, we really have like an epidemic here, health wise." That's why spirituality is so important, because spirituality helps you focus back on just you. Spirituality helps you focus only on you. Spirituality won't have you concerned with Sister Sue sitting on the second row like people do in church with the church mess, right? We don't care what about Sister Sue on the second row. I care about myself. And so practical spirituality, where you may not believe in any specific practice, but you know that you want to connect to your authentic self, your higher self, that's available to anybody. You don't have to practice, that part, you like just being your best human self. That's for everybody. If you want to get into a certain practice, that's a different conversation for a different day too, because there's rules about certain practices and who can participate. But practical principles of spirituality and that will help you move into higher consciousness, higher realms of understanding of yourself so that you know how you better to relate to your fellow human. That's why it's so important to re-embody. I'm trying to keep mindful of time because I promise I'm gonna keep y'all here for 1 hour. I'm gonna keep y'all here for 1 hour. And Coach Malachi, I can tell him I'll let y'all out early tonight. And then we'll be back next week. Once Coach comes back. So reclaiming your intuition is a liberation act. It's an act of liberation. And it means trusting what our ancestors knew. It means trusting what our ancestors knew, those that came before us. It means the wisdom, what they knew, the indigenous that were here, those that were brought across the transatlantic slave trade, those that came for the potato famine from Ireland. What they knew was that wisdom lives in the whole self. Why would we be created if there wasn't value in how we were made? Why would God create human if the actual composition and makeup of what human is wasn't the full, he said the full in the image of God? That means the actual creation of human, everything about us, the muscles, the tendons, the bone, it all is a masterpiece and it's made in the image of God. Our ancestors, those that came before us, knew this. They knew it. And by them knowing it, it's that's how you'll see that when so many of us are now understanding our relationship to our ancestors. I taught a class a couple weeks ago trying to introduce and demystify some of those beliefs. Understanding that the dance, the prayer, the dreaming, the oral traditions, the telling of stories, the protests, and care of all valid forms are all valid forms of knowing. That spirit speaks not just through the pulpit, but through our bones, our blood, our breath. God speaks through us most times outside the pulpit. Let's keep it real. Because there's stuff going on now, I'm not really sure. And I'm speaking as somebody who used to stand in the pulpit and preach. Okay? God, spirit, source speaks through this vessel. Our bones bear witness. Our blood bears witness. Our mouths bear witness. The soil that our ancestors died on bears witness. What is happening over in Palestine, the blood of the Palestinians bears witness. The genocides that are happening around this country, around the world, Sudan, Congo, the blood of those and those that came before them bear witness and they speak. Even if you want to take it to church, I can take it to church because in Ezekiel, he had a vision and he was in the valley of dry bones. And when he saw the dry bones, He was asked, can these bones live? And he called the bones from every direction, north, south, east, west, and called every sinew and things together and brought the bones back together. Who we are and what makes us as humans always bears witness and speaks louder than a doctrine or a dogma. And it's imperative for us to be able to speak and know and be in connection so that we can bear witness. Because there are times we may not be able to say out loud what's going on, but we can look at one another and we know because it bears witness. Yes, we are powerful. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. I will throw in scriptures to help you realize that even in church, they were telling you the tidbits you needed to know so that you could still go on this journey of deconstruction and still realize that what was in the book, there were some answers in the book that kept to remind you of who you were versus the doctrine that'll teach you not to trust yourself, not to lean on your own understanding, and to rely on a sky daddy to come and save you when the greatest witness that you will ever have is the spirit that it resides in you because it's the direct link to God. I mean, that's it right there. Um, and so there are things you can do to root and ground yourself. And what I will do is those that are in the Patreon community, I will actually post the ritual that you can do. This is nothing spooky. This is nothing deep. It's just something that you can do to help yourself reaffirm. But I'm going to walk us through some things that we can do right now for those that are not in our Patreon community, because you can still take these practices and start connecting to these centers of your body and come back to who you are. Okay. Yes. Dr. Dorothy loves my reference to Sky Daddy. I can't really claim that. I hear a lot of, we use it a lot in my TFC community, in my family, my TFC fam. And I'm also wearing my TFC shirt tonight. Peace and Blue Magic Hair Grease. Sorry, had to unplug the TFC. I love my TFC fam. So with Pastor Christian Smith, we love Pastor Christian here in Expanded Consciousness. So for gut affirmations, things that you can do to root your body. Now, when you practice, if you practice any type of meditations, then that there is a meditation, or if you understand chakras, then you understand that there is a root chakra, right? You have to ground yourself. So you'll hear people say, you meditate, you focus on your root chakra, or you'll hear people even say grounding yourself. You have to ground yourself, right? So when you want to root yourself in your body, you're going to close your eyes, and the affirmation is going to say, I trust the wisdom in my bones. Let me put that up there for you. I trust the wisdom in my bones. I trust the wisdom in my bones. Even if you just got up every day and before you started talking to anybody, engaging with anybody, anything, even if you just acknowledge that one thing, I trust the wisdom in my bones. And as you contemplate on that, you sit there, I trust the wisdom in my bones. And then you ask yourself, what is my gut trying to tell me today? What is my gut trying to tell me today? And then if you just take no less than 5 minutes, but just sit there and just sit there in stillness, it will take practice. But if you can get comfortable with just sitting there and observing, see what you hear, write it down, reflect on it. But just starting this affirmation every day, I trust the wisdom in my bones. That's the first mantra you can use. The second one is going to be for your heart. And it says that my emotions are sacred messengers. My emotions are sacred messengers. This is how you in your heart can feel what is true. You use this mantra every day. My emotions are sacred messengers. Touch your heart. Whatever emotions you feel, whatever it is, sit with yourself and remind yourself that your emotions are sacred messengers. What am I feeling? What am I feeling right now that I can't name? Whatever it is, joy, grief, anger, love. If tears come, let them tears fall. Men, women, boys, girls, let the emotions exist and don't interrupt the emotions. And if you have a connection with your ancestors, or even if you don't, you want to start, name the ancestors, name your ancestors from me, from my bloodline, freedom fighters, loved ones to invoke a connection. If you if you were with your grandmother and you felt the safest you ever felt, call that grandmother and just say, Grandma, help me to remember that my emotions are sacred. Sit with me here while I process my emotions. Y'all might think it's like spooky or whatever, but when you take it back to a memory or to someone who could let you be yourself and just sit there, you'll be able to recognize your emotions more clearly. My emotions are sacred messengers. Don't ever let people tell you that your emotions are not of value, because your emotions need to be, oh, you need to be aware of them and they need to be shared if necessary. But more than anything, you got to feel them. Because if you lose the feeling in your connection, you become numb and desensitized. And then you are disconnected, or what we call disembodied. And the next affirmation that you can say to reconnect to your head: my thoughts are not cages, they are vision. My thoughts are not cages, they are vision. Put that up so you guys can see it. My thoughts are not cages, they are vision. When we have gone through trauma and grief, we can get trapped in our head. And if we are dealing with the mood disorder, like a depression or anxiety, we can become prisoners to our own thoughts. And that's why it's important to declare that your thoughts are not cages. You don't have to be trapped by your thoughts. You don't have to be trapped by the flashbacks and ruminating over what you went through. You can get yourself free in your mind, and then you can see your new self, your whole self, your healed self, and look towards that vision. Your thoughts are not meant to trap you in a cage, they are meant to liberate you. Acknowledge your forehead and your crown. And it says, what do I know? Ask yourself these questions when you contemplate: my thoughts are not cages, they are vision. Ask yourself, what do I know that I've been taught to doubt? What do you know that somebody said, now you need to doubt that? What truth is mine, even if it contradicts what I was taught? Hmm? What truth do I know? What truth is my truth that I was taught was wrong? And then when you close out this time with yourself, you can place your hand on your gut, on your heart. You can bow your head and you say this. And this is what I think is the most beautiful thing. And it's a wonderful way to end the evening. And then we'll go to comment. I'm going to put this up. It's a good one, so I won't say it yet. I'm gonna just let you. We're gonna read it together. Okay. To close out these affirmations, you say, I return to myself. I honor what my ancestors preserved. I listen. I feel. I know. I return to myself. I honor what my ancestors preserved. I listen. I feel. I know. No doubt. No unsurety. No fogginess. Very clear. You listen. I listen. I feel. I know. And as you start to implement these simple sayings and they're simple, and just keep affirming that with yourself daily, and keep nurturing that heart, that head, that gut, that full embodiment will come, and you will feel a liberation, and you will feel a wholeness that you've never felt before. And with that, you can be your true, authentic self, and we can watch you shine, and we can celebrate the transformation in your life. Thank you for your time. Let's go to some comments. Let's go to some comments. Um, let's see. I saw a lot of you all were typing up saying the mantras out loud in the comments. Um, I want to say hello to a couple of people that I didn't get to say hello to earlier. Brother Don Jackson. Yes, I trust it. Yes, I love that one, right? I love that one because that is a powerful, powerful mantra to declare. I trust the wisdom in my bones. Uh Don is going to be speaking on Dr. Dorothy's Transformation Tuesday in April. So we're going to love to hear him, and I'm excited to hear him. So thank you, Brother Don, for joining. And Brother Ruben, good to see you, Brother Ruben. Yes, you've been doing this since the start of 2020. All right, in alignment already, getting these mantras in, and practicing and communing with ancestors. I love that. I love that. Let's see, is there anybody else that I didn't shout out and give love to for this evening? Oh, hi, Miss Elise. It's good to see you again. That was last. I remember you from last week. It's okay that you're late. You got here for the affirmations. That's good. That's wonderful. That is okay. You came just in time. So it's good to see you. It's good to see you. I just want to make sure that I didn't. Okay, let's see. Brother John. I knew I had. Yes, Brother John. Happy anniversary, Brother John. I love you. Um, Thank you so much. Happy anniversary. I'm glad you're here this evening, filling in for Coach. He finally has a day off. Oh, absolutely. Good to be seen. Absolutely. We're gonna try our best. Sometimes when we get into the flow of things, we don't always get to all the comments, but we're working on doing a better job to make sure that everybody is seen and heard. And oh, I knew I missed somebody. Hi, Lasonia. Good to see you. And then I think Mr. Loris. Hi, Mr. Loris says next year she'll be taking a class called The Psychology of the African American Experience. Yes. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Yes. Oh, you should definitely enjoy that class then. You will definitely enjoy that class. And then I know I saw somebody. Oh, yes, I did. I saw my sibling. My TFC sib and my expanded conscious sib. There's Celeste. Um, you know, this journey of enlightenment, this journey to our authentic self, um, is really something that most people, it's not easy. It's not an easy journey, but it's a beautiful journey if you understand that life is full of lessons, full of lessons. And in our Patreon community for expanded consciousness, we take time every 2 weeks to kind of dig and delve a little more intimately, into things to help um, whoever in the community might need additional support. You know, we learn a lot of things. We talk about a lot of things. We've had a lot of people host, come on here and speak and give us a lot of information. But the intimacy of the expanded conscious community in Patreon affords us to get to us to know one another a little better in a more authentic way, and it allows us to really kind of tackle challenging issues and come up collectively with support, answers, guidance, um, or just a listening ear. And that's one of the things I love about our expanded consciousness community. So the link is there if you want to join us on Patreon. Oh, let's see. I see Brother Carl. Good to see you. Miss Gwen says she wants to learn how to set up an altar. I believe that I am going to be teaching on that soon. I don't know if it's going to be, I don't know which platform I'm doing it on, but I will be teaching that. What I will say is this. Um, Altars don't have to be complicated. I will say that. Um, when we come out of religious traditions and fundamentalist traditions, we tend to think that everything has to be exactly perfect for things to work. And thank you, Dr. Dorothy. Yes, it's a great community, but um, yes, for the altars, they're not difficult. You don't have to make them difficult. Don't overthink them. It's about authenticity and connection. So I'm sure I think we're going to do some version of a part two. I haven't talked with Dr. Dorothy, but I think there may be a part two. And I'm still going to do something for altars, even if it's something that gets posted in our Patreon community so that everybody can just, like a quick snippet. It really doesn't have to be hard. I've helped a couple of people. I have helped a couple of people just start the process. Um, Oh, well, Dr. Dorothy has just spoken. Dr. Dorothy has just spoken, and we will have part two apparently with me. So there you go. Um, so that's good to know. But the more we understand and demystify the fact that our indigenous and ancestral practices were a way for us to embody ourselves and embody and there's wisdom, ancient wisdom contained in those practices, and that there should be a reverence for those practices rather than believing the colonized narrative that our practices were demonic or savage or whatever. The more we realize that those actual traditions are steeped in wisdom and are steeped in hi. Hi, Miss Marie. It's good to see you. Oh, and I think I forgot Mother White. Oh, yes. Hi, Mother White. Um, Miss Marie, I'm glad she was here too. It says my nephew taught me about setting up an altar in his ministry of creating with flour. Yeah, yeah. It can be very simple. It can be extremely simple. So I will happily put something up probably for our Patreon community. I don't think we necessarily have to do it like on expanding consciousness. We could just put it up in the community. But I'm 10 minutes over. I was trying to get out exactly in an hour, but I wanted to make sure that I took the time to acknowledge all of the um all of the comments and everybody that's in the room. I appreciate everybody tuning in tonight while Malachi takes a well-earned day off. We'll be back next week. Malachi will be in the building. I'm not taking over expanded consciousness. I am simply filling in where needed. So I truly appreciate him for trusting me with this sacred space. Oh, that's right. Miss Marie is in Tulsa. So those of you that are in Tulsa, hit up Miss Marie because I think you guys will have fun. But I do want to thank you guys for being here tonight. Our community is a really special place, and I'm putting the Cash App for Malachi there now. We don't always put the Cash App up. I have to constantly remind him to do it, but um, we do this from a place of an organic place. You know, There are costs associated with it, but that's not why we exist. But if you want to show appreciation for Malachi for what he has done, to keep the expanded consciousness platform going, then his cash app is $ Malachi Gross. And one more time, I'll put up our Patreon community, expanded consciousness community. Again, if you would like to get a preview of the community and you don't have like the entry amount, I think it's $10 for our first tier. Message Malachi, let him know, and then we can work on getting you a 30-day trial. Um, Thank you, Dr. Dorothy. Thank you, Miss Dolores. Oh, thank you. Gosh, you guys. So yeah, so people are resting. I know on the East Coast it is a little after 10, but well, no, it's more than a little after 10. It's 10:40 something. It's almost 11. But I just want to thank you for holding space for us tonight. Thank you for joining us, and we will be back next week. Take care, everybody.